Hello everyone, I'm Reena Augustine, the founder of Red Carpet Functions, and you're watching Community Impact. The main reason why we do these many amazing interviews is to bring to you the people who are making a difference in the community. And I have the privilege to introduce you to Dr. Wendell Rosavier. He has cared for several men who have been raped or sexually abused. He works with both male and female victims and treated both male and female perpetrators of sexual abuse. He works in general practice, gay and lesbian health. He actually has worked in prison since 1975 and had the roles of organist, chaplain, doctor, counselor, and advocate. He is currently a volunteer doctor at a men's maximum security prison, Sir David Longland Correctional Center. He also works in HIV/AIDS, drugs and alcohol recovery, plus rape and sexual abuse recovery for victims and perpetrators, both male and female. Please welcome Dr. Wendell Rosavier.
Hi, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your time and joining us today, Doctor. I'm sure we will learn a lot from you. You have been in Brisbane all your life?
Oh no, I lived everywhere.
Okay.
My mum was a teacher and my father was a minister, so we moved every 1 or 2 years. And also I did live overseas in Hong Kong, and I did work as a trek doctor in Nepal, so I've had lots of diverse experiences.
And how was the experience in Nepal and Hong Kong?
Well, Hong Kong's a vibrant 24-hour city, so it really made me alive to the big world. And working in Nepal was fantastic. I looked at those mountains and thought, oh, it's too hard, but then I realised you only have to take one step at a time, and so I like to always break impossible things down to possible.
That's the way the life has to be lived, isn't it?
Sure.
Wow. So all the work that you have done, I would like to know, how did you discover that this is what you wanted to do?
Yeah, I grew up in a very strict religious family, and so helping people and caring about people and saving the world were really core values for me, and so I always wanted to help people. I did start working in jail at the age of 21. I don't work there at the moment. I work in the community, and people come and bridge back to the community through my clinic. But I had a bit of a save the world approach. But one of the good things about going to work in prison, that I learned to accept other people and be honest face to face. And that helped me then learn to accept myself and be honest for myself. So I believe in a mutual benefit model, that as we accept each other and make it safe to be honest together, we actually learn from each other. So I learn from a mutual benefit model. And so now, instead of deluding myself that I could change other people or save other people, I just make it safe that they can be honest and I can be honest, we can be honest together. And then they can come out of the fear of my honesty getting me rejected, or my addiction getting me stigmatized or judged, or my sexual abuse being used against me to make me feel devalued again. And so in all my work, I just simply make people feel safe and valuable so that they can afford to be honest for themselves, and then they change themselves, not me delude myself that I change them. Because in jail, if you have an agenda to change somebody else, they think, oh, you think you're better than me, and so then they don't trust you.
That's right. That's right. At the age of 21, you started working in jail, and you mentioned that you worked for 30 years?
Yes, until 1975, until 2005, and my prison closed to be renovated to make a bigger new jail. But I still kept working in the community, because for 30 years I've run a drug and alcohol recovery group called GLADS, the Gay and Lesbian Alcohol and Drug Support Group. And it's used by people bridging back into community. And for 28 years I've run MARS, which is Men Affected by Rape and Sexual Abuse, and I've cared for about 1,400 men who've been raped or sexually abused. And I've worked with about 140 perpetrators of sexual abuse. So I work with victims and perpetrators because I want there to be less abuse in our culture.
Yes.
And abuse is a very damaging thing that results in people feeling not valuable. And so I want people to reclaim their value so that they don't get stuck with shame or secrecy or self-hate, because one of the saddest things about unresolved abuse is that you might believe that you are a worthless person, and that can lead to either self-abuse or addiction or suicide. And so
that's right.
Whether I'm working with a victim or a perpetrator, I want that person to regain their value, because valuable people value themselves and value each other, and that's the healing of abuse and also the prevention of abuse.
Yes. So just a simple example that if something goes wrong in our own home or family, we feel like, we don't have self-worth. So imagine when somebody is convicted, it is so hard for anyone to gain the confidence, as you mentioned, that they just lose it, and that's when the suicide happens. So in your journey, what was the age group that you came across that were actually committing suicide?
Well, it's across the spectrum. And for me, the two most powerful understandings I have about suicide and suicide prevention is that if you feel worthless and if you feel hopeless, then suicide becomes predictable. And the only good thing about predictable is then it makes it preventable.
Yes.
Because if we can help people feel valuable and feel a sense of hope that they can be themselves rather than being Mr. Perfect or Mr. Superman, then if I can be me rather than hate myself because I can't be the perfect person or the Superman or the person that maybe everyone else wants me to be. And that's a parallel journey in my own life, because before I could accept me and be honest about the fact that I'm gay in a family that was very religious, and I had to deal with the fact that they believed I would be going to hell for being gay.
Oh, that's
and so
sad.
I had to learn to accept myself and be honest. And in that, I now learn to accept other people and let them be honest. So that's why I talk about the mutual benefit that we learn from each other. And in learning to accept people who are rejected by society, I learn to accept me. And I learn to reclaim my freedom to be honest. And that means I don't need to judge other people or put myself up or down. And that gives me a thing called freedom and peace.
I read that when your family found out about you, they didn't speak to you?
They always spoke to me, but it was hard for them
to accept
it. And while it was a secret, they didn't really have to face it. But I got many awards, like I got Brisbane Citizen of the Year award, and I got Australian Doctor of the Year, or another name, Best Individual Contribution to Healthcare in Australia. And
OAM?
OAM. And while I got those awards, the journalists would interview me and ask me, are you married? I said, oh, no, I'm not married, I'm gay. And my family were really confronted by that freedom to be honest. And I said, I'm not being honest to hurt you. I'm being honest so that other people can realise that they are valuable and they're free to be honest too. And if that joining of your value and your honesty together means that you can have peace or integrity or freedom, that's the prevention of suicide, because many people who have diverse sexualities or genders don't feel valuable in our culture, because our culture is based on performing and conforming.
Absolutely.
And so if my freedom to be honest can help other people be honest and that prevents a death, then I'm free to do that. And I guess it's called free to love. And I think I'm a gift to my parents, because they had a lot of fear that if I didn't conform or meet an expectation or a stereotype of what a good boy would be or a straight man would be or a doctor should be, that made them feel that they'd somehow failed or that they couldn't save me from this hell that they thought I was going to. I said, well, our job's to love each other. God's job's to do the judging. So let's God be the judge and we'll just do the loving, and therefore we learn what love is. It's about valuing people and making it safe to be honest together.
Wow, so your motto is spread love because it's infectious?
My motto is to make love infectious. And so you catch it and enjoy it, and then you spread it to somebody else, because love's a lovely word, but sometimes we don't know what the ingredients are. And so I break the ingredients down to user-friendly parts. Let's accept or value each other and make it safe for each person to be honest. And that doesn't mean we have to agree. It doesn't mean we make choices for each other or control each other or judge each other. It just means that we value each other so that honesty then becomes the vehicle of the love.
Absolutely, absolutely. So there are different societies. I come from India. In our society, we have third world problems. Youngsters growing up have their own issues. But growing up in Australia, I've been here for 11 years, and you growing up in Australia, what is the major problem that the youngsters face now? Because you worked in drug and alcohol area. So is that the main reason?
I guess it's the most visible symptom of the problem. But the deeper problem is that I think people don't enjoy their own true worth. You might like my definition of an addict. An addict is a valuable person who doesn't realise it. And so it's not just about stopping the anaesthetic that turns off the pain. It's about meeting the need, and the deepest need is to feel valuable. And if people don't feel valuable, then they might find themselves using alcohol and drugs to fit in with their peer group, or using alcohol and drugs to lower their inhibitions to get close to people, but not being able to sustain intimacy or having fulfillment or sustainability in their love. And so I think there are 3 models for addiction. One is if you're an addict, you're a bad person, and that's why most people with those problems will find themselves in trouble with the law, or 80 to 90% of people in prison have got an alcohol and drug problem.
Yeah.
And so the bad model makes people feel rejected and stigmatised, and also, sadly, the bad version makes parents feel a failure, and kids hide from their parents because they don't want to hurt their parents.
That's
and so
right.
we kill the parent-child communication, which is actually our best preventive resource. The second model of addiction is if you use drugs, then you're sick. And so we think, oh, you have to take doctor drugs instead of illegal drugs.
Yeah.
And there's a little bit less stigma in being sick than there is in being bad. But I don't think there's a lot of relief in being bad or sick. I think there's relief in being valuable. And so my definition of an addict is addict's a valuable person. Recovery is about meeting that need to feel valuable. Because when we value ourselves, we regain our freedom to be honest and say, are my drugs actually enhancing my life or robbing my life? And because we're valuable, we don't deserve to be robbed by addiction. And just this last year, I've written a chapter in this book, Musicians and Addiction.
Mm-hmm.
And there are many authors, including Archie Roach, Paul Kelly, Eminem, like many international musicians, because musicians often want to feel valuable by achieving or being perfect.
Yeah.
But that's really vulnerable, because then when you can't sustain that, or you judge yourself as not perfect, or you might get to the top of the ladder but don't enjoy freedom or equality or friendship or be able to be friends with everybody,
Yeah.
you can be very rich, famous and lonely.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
Whom to
so
trust, whom to talk.
And that's dangerous, because the truth is we all just need to feel accepted and valued. And so we've written this book to help people realise that recovery is about reclaiming your value, and with it your freedom to be honest, that you don't have to hide or pretend or be judged by other people or judge yourself.
Yeah.
Otherwise, actually suicide becomes, again, predictable and
Yeah.
preventable.
Do people judge themselves a lot?
Yes, because while we live in a society that's based on an achievement ladder, that rich is better than poor, or meeting parents' expectations is better than failing, or people who don't use drugs are better than people who do use drugs, we internalise that. And even though we might hate it, we actually, because we internalise it, we can judge ourselves.
Yeah.
We might see ourselves as weak or failure or bad.
Yeah.
And that pushes people into hiding instead of being honest. And that hiding is fear-based. And you can run your whole life on fear, but it doesn't meet our needs.
Yeah.
It doesn't give us value. It doesn't give us freedom. It doesn't give us the right to be honest as an equal. And so that's why I like to move from fear to love. And my starting place is you're valuable now, not when you stopped using drugs. And you're valuable now, even if you're uniquely different to what your parents might expect you to be. Like some parents might say, oh, get a real job, don't be a musician.
That's absolutely correct.
And parents might have lovely dreams for their kids, but if they can model acceptance and make themselves approachable, that their children feel free to be honest with them, then they're being successful parents.
Yes,
And I
yes.
say, if you can model honest rather than model perfect, you're now being seen by your child as being approachable, real, and the child won't internalise that and feel they have to hide from you because of fear.
So I was in the university, Griffith University, so it was my first day, orientation day, and university had already started. My class was going to start, just orientation, and I was walking, and there was this guy with a guitar, and there was another lady with her, instrument. And then I never spoke to them because I was new. And then later on I said, I should ask them, what do they do? What are they doing? Are they busking here? What are they doing? No, they're studying. I'm like, your parents allowed you? So that was something very shocking for me, because the first thing that we want to study is something that can give you a job, because like music and all is something our parents will never ever, tell us to do. So yeah, I agree what you exactly mentioned, that, and the competition is so much in that industry, especially with the art industry. The competition is too high. So if you get into it, you get into it. Otherwise, a lot of struggle. Yeah.
Well, sadly, we see many people being high achievers but still committing suicide.
Yes.
And it's in many spheres, the music sphere, the art sphere, even the wealth gaining sphere. And so achievement is not a guarantee for the fulfillment of your need for self-acceptance. And so I like to take that ladder and turn it on its side and says, I'm valuable, you're valuable, I'm equal, you're equal.
Yeah.
We're both valuable. Let's make it safe that each person can be honest, be unique, be creative, be genuine. And we open the door to mutual fulfillment, to creativity, to genuine connection instead of hiding and competing. And it makes life fun.
Fun and easier and
Yeah.
no judgments, right?
And I say to people, you're not the problem, the ladder's the problem. And if you think I'm only valuable when I get to the top of the ladder, that ladder's toxic.
Yeah.
And so let's do a ladderectomy. If your appendix was going to kill you, I'd need to do an appendicectomy.
Yes.
But if your ladder's going to kill you, let's do a ladderectomy and throw out the ladder
Yeah.
and realise that you're valuable now, not when.
Yeah.
And you're valuable and you're equal. You don't need to compare or compete
Yeah.
and think that you are less valuable because you're being true to yourself or being unique, whether you're gay or whether you're straight or whether you're bi or whether you're trans or whether you've got a creative job that makes you fulfilled, but it's different to someone else's job.
Yes, the job that you do, to be honest with you, it involves a lot of emotions.
Sure.
You have to be very empathetic, right? Those are things that only a strong person can take it into the stride and do it. So how strong are you? If you have worked in this industry for so many years, tell me that there must be some times that you would like, okay, this is it, this is too much for me. Have you had that experience?
I like this question because we think that safety comes from being strong. But I'm not strong, I'm free. And I'm free to be me and I'm free to be honest. If I have to be strong to achieve or have to be strong to carry on the whole world in my shoulders, of course I would feel like I'm going to sink when I couldn't carry the whole world and I couldn't fix everyone or I couldn't change other people if they're self-harming or stuck in addiction. And so I don't delude myself that I could change anybody else in the whole world. The only person I can change is me.
Yeah.
And if I can accept me and reclaim my freedom to be honest, that's a gift to the next person where they could value themselves and reclaim their freedom to be honest. And that's sustainable and that's caring rather than wearing.
That's right. Caring rather than wearing.
And
That's
with wearing, you have to be strong and you
Yeah.
have to rescue people or you have to carry whatever they dump on you. And
Yeah.
the risk is you could wear out. But I don't wear, I care.
Yeah.
And caring includes honesty where I can be honest and you can be honest. And I can say, I can't make decisions for you. I can only make decisions for me. Or I can't learn for you. Or I can't work out what's in my interest or what's not in your interest. I can only be honest for me. But if I'm honest for me and you then feel free to be honest for you, you can say, is what I'm doing working or not? Are drugs in my interest or not? Is this a dead end or is this a through road? And I can then inspire you to be honest for you. And so then
Yeah.
you get relief by seeing my freedom to be honest, not me wanting to change you. Because remember I said in jail, if I tried to change people, they would discredit me saying, oh, you're a do-gooder.
Yeah.
Or you think you're better than me. And they would think that I was judging them by that agenda to change them. But if I don't accept people and nurture their honesty, which produces their freedom to change, then I actually couldn't help them. And so I'm not strong, I'm just free.
Free and caring.
Yeah, and
Wow.
we've got a lot of messages in our society. You've got to be positive. Well, what do we do with the negative?
Yeah.
And so I actually don't teach positivity, I teach honesty.
Honesty.
And if you can be honest about the positives and the negatives, you deal with both.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we're so busily trying to suppress part of ourselves that we don't understand or trying to be positive at the expense of being honest, we can feel a failure because we can't pretend. And pretending doesn't actually meet our needs for self-acceptance or the freedom to be honest and have integrity.
I like that. So actually you're so right about, okay, we are always positive. Yeah, be positive. But we are suppressing the negativity that's in us,
Yeah.
which actually has to be honestly put out so that we can solve it.
Yeah, and I think every feeling's there as a driver, like hunger to get a feed, or lonely to get a friend, or anger to say fair go. And I'm inspired by Gandhi.
Oh, really?
You know, he got kicked off the train and he
Yes.
didn't feel valued. And so then he devoted his whole life to restoring the value of people.
That's right.
And with that value, the freedom for each person to be honest and say, we need the right to vote, not just be suppressed by people who have power over us. And so I'm not saying something new. I'm just saying
What an
something.
example.
I'm just saying something that's liberating for all of us. Because when we could accept ourselves and welcome every feeling, those feelings drive us. Because we all know heaps of stuff, but knowledge doesn't always deliver motivation, but feelings do.
That's right.
And so I actually teach my patients, if you're angry, let's use that anger to meet the need for justice, which is the equal value of all people. And when we're equally valuable, then we're safe. And that's why when I work in rape, I want people to get their value back so they can be equal.
Yeah.
And with that, reclaim the freedom to say yes and no. Not just get safety in their survival mode where they have big walls up or have to be strong to always be on top and in control, because some survivors aren't just damaged by what happened to them, they're often damaged by the limitations of survival. They live in these fortresses of fear where they never let people in.
Yes.
Or they've always got to be on top or perfect so no one will criticise them or be safe. But people don't actually warm to someone who's control-focused or wanting to be a top all the time in their
Why
relationship.
is that though? Is it the upbringing?
Well, I call it survival.
Okay.
And I say I want you to move from surviving to thriving. And in survival, you can have big fortresses and never let people close, or you can always be a control person who wants to win every war.
Yeah.
But you can never relax, you can never let your guard down, you're always hyper-vigilant and can't relax. And I want you to get your value back so that now you're free to be honest as an equal.
Yeah.
You don't need your fortress and you don't need to be Mr. Control Freak or Mrs. Control Freak.
Wow.
Because otherwise we don't get the freedom to be intimate or vulnerable. And for true love, we need vulnerability and safety. Otherwise there's no intimacy.
That's correct. That's correct. So not survive, thrive.
Thrive, yeah.
I like
And
that.
thrive is reclaiming our value, so I'm free to be me. I don't have to be Superman or Superwoman, and I can then let go my fortress, because fortresses are so limiting. I call it medieval safety because I can't let my guard down.
Yeah.
But people don't warm to a shell, they warm to a person. And that's why I share with you, I'm free to be honest. I'm not better than or strong.
That's right. Honesty. Be honest.
Well, honesty is beautiful, but unless it's linked to safety, it's actually pure vulnerability.
Okay. Linked to safety.
Yeah, the safety is if we accept each other, I feel free to be honest. But if I think you're going to reject me, I might hide or edit
That's
or
correct.
pretend.
So how do we know?
Some good measures of whether people accept us as, do they let me make my own choices?
Got it.
Are they free to be honest with me, or do they pretend to be this perfect person who actually I don't trust?
Yes. Yes. And you don't have to go far to find them.
Well, even little kids are good at picking that up.
Yes.
You don't have to use big words to let someone know that you accept them or value them. And certainly kids are good for testing that.
Yes.
If you accept them, they relax.
Yeah.
If you don't accept them, they will test you, and we might call it rebellion.
That's right.
But actually that's the kids needing to be safe, and good on them. That's their spirit saying, I want to feel valuable. Do you accept me? Do you mean what you say? Are you going to do what you say? Can I trust you? And we need that safety. Otherwise, it's about who's the winner or who's the loser, or who's hiding or who's the hypocrite or who's lying. And those things don't produce trust, but acceptance and honesty can. And that's why, for me, acceptance and honesty are the ingredients of love.
Yes.
Catch it, spread it, enjoy it.
Enjoy it. So what was the tough part for you at that time?
Well, because I grew up with being gay as a criminal thing, and I cared for the last person put in jail for being gay, society was not equally valuing of straight people and gay people. And so it wasn't just about the law, it was about attitudes.
Yes.
Like even the word faggot means a bunch of sticks, because gay people were burnt at the stake. And people have a fag or a cigarette, and that's a symbol that that word was used to say that gay people were not valuable. And even in England,
very sad.
in 200 years ago, more people were hung for being gay than hung for murder. And so deep in our culture we've got the stigma, and certainly in rape and sexual abuse. The rape laws were not changed until 1997 in Queensland. Before that, rape was unlawful carnal knowledge of a female. And so that means it's not even possible under the law for a man to be raped. And that's because 300 years ago, a British judge said it's impossible for a man to be raped unless he would fight to the death. And so if you don't fight to the death, it means you're not a man. And so we get this stigma that men have to be strong rather than it's okay to be honest. Or you're weak and therefore you're not a man, or maybe you're gay and you deserve it, or you wanted it. And so we'll get this institutionalized homophobia and prejudice that made it hard for men to even ask for help. And so the law was changed in 1997 to include men and women as rape. And the law was changed for sexuality to be respectful of all sexualities being valuable and equal.
Yeah.
And only about 2 years ago was the law changed for equal age of consent. We had
Yeah.
unequal ages. So the law became a reflection of institutionalized devaluing of people, that we
Yeah.
didn't value gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender people as equals. And I'm saying safety comes from having a society where the law reflects the equal value of all people,
Yeah.
and that makes it then safe to be respectful of the honest differences that we had, whether it's different religions, different identity, different sexualities, or different preferences.
That's right. What is the advice that you would like to give the youngsters today?
You're valuable, even if you don't feel valuable. Reclaim your value so that you can actually enjoy being you, and with that, be free to be you and free to be honest, and find people who value you for your honesty. I call it going shopping in the shops that have got what you need. And if other people want to judge you or change you or put you down, then don't go shopping in those shops.
Wow.
Go shopping in shops where people respect your value and enhance your value and respect you for your honesty, so that you can reclaim the freedom to be honest, because that's the freedom to be you.
That is amazing. Thank you so much for the valuable lessons that you have actually shared with us. Thank you, Dr. Wendell, for joining us today.
I've enjoyed it. Thank you.
Wow, thank you.